Welcome to this webinar on strategies and resources for strong grant commercialization plans. This presentation is made possible by funding through the TEDCO Incubator Assistance Fund. A special thank you goes out to TEDCO for funding this seminar and supporting the Maryland startup community. Part 1 of this presentation is going to cover some preliminary material and the SBIR commercialization plan first 3 main sections, including value of the SBIR STTR project, company overview, and the market, customer, and competition analysis. Let me introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Smith, and I'm principal at SOMAX Consulting. I've put together the presentation content and will be guiding you through the slides. This slide highlights my background that is relevant to the small business life science grant applications. In the event you have specific questions after the presentation, my contact information can be found on the Real People Resources slide at the end of this deck. Maryland state funding. Although this presentation will focus on federal funding, I would like to mention that the state of Maryland also has resources available to small businesses. TEDCO is a fabulous resource. Here, 4 funding opportunities are listed, although TEDCO does support additional vehicles. Note that these are not grants, and either a company match is expected or some level of payback upon success of the company. For example, MII Phase 3 is a reimbursable grant. Payback is 3% of revenues for 10 years following the award date, until twice the amount of the Phase 3 award is paid back. The University of Maryland supports the MIPS grants. For this, you require a university collaborator, and the work will be done at the University of Maryland. The federal government supports small business innovative product development through the SBIR, STTR grant programs. This is the largest public venture capital initiative in the United States. The mission is to support scientific excellence and technological innovation through the investment of federal research funds in critical American priorities to build a strong national economy. Throughout this presentation, I will primarily speak about SBIR because it's the larger program. However, pretty much everything I say regarding SBIR also applies to STTR. Okay, so the federal grants, the SBIR and STTR, have several phases. Phase 1 awards are intended to establish the technical merit, feasibility, and commercial potential of the proposed R&D efforts. Phase 2 awards are intended to continue the R&D efforts. Funding is based on the results achieved in Phase 1. The scientific and technical merit and commercial potential of the project are proposed in Phase 2. For Fast Track, both the Phase 1 and Phase 2 grant applications are submitted and reviewed together as one application. The NIH Fast Track mechanism can reduce or eliminate the funding gap between phases. For the SBIR Direct to Phase 2 award, you must have performed the Phase 1 stage of research through other funding sources. The Direct to Phase 2 is absolutely not available for the STTR program at this time. Phase 2B awards provide follow-on funding to small businesses for projects that require extraordinary time and effort in the R&D phase, such as drug or device projects. Not all institutes offer Phase 2B awards, and depending on the institute, the budget may be requested for up to $1 million per year for up to 3 years. Finally, CRP may provide up to $3 million in additional funding for Phase 2 SBIR STTR projects. CRP funds cover work that is not typically supported through SBIR or STTR. For example, preparation of documents for an FDA submission, development of an intellectual property strategy, clinical studies, manufacturing cost, regulatory assistance, and subcontracted work to other institutions or contract research organizations. So SBIR STTR is the ideal venture fund. It's stage appropriate, funds early stage development projects to start or expand a business. It offers a rigorous process to bring innovative, risky technologies to market, and you don't need to know any insiders. It's a no-cost equity fund. You receive non-dilutive capital. That means it's free to you. Cash infusions can exceed $1 million per project. You receive cash in advance of the work being done. You have no equity ownership loss. No board seats are given up. There are absolutely no loan payback requirements, even if the research tanks. No royalties will be due, and you retain full ownership of the technology and intellectual property. The SBIR positions you for future success. Peer review provides technology validation to gain credibility with potential investors. You'll likely receive prioritized business plan review from many angels and VCs. Through this research, you'll de-risk your technology, and it increases the value of your intellectual property with successful proof of principle or prototypes. 11 federal agencies with R&D budgets over $100 million participate in the SBIR programs. These agencies allocate 2.9% of their budgets to the program, and this percentage ramps up to 3.2% by 2017. Overall, more than $2.5 billion is awarded to SBIR companies annually. Small Business Technology Transfer is what STTR stands for. The 5 federal agencies with extramural budgets over $1 billion participate. This is the DoD, DHHS, NASA, NSF, and the DOE. STTR is ideal for small companies that may not have access to a highly credible PI that has a great publication record. This slide illustrates the NIH SBIR STTR funding rate for fiscal year 2014. Note that the SBIR and STTR success rates are about 19% for phase 1 and are about 41% for phase 2. SBIR does have its downsides, which you need to be prepared for. Consider the first-time learning curve, which is incredibly steep. There's a multi-step first-time company registration that I would recommend allocating at least 8 weeks of time to get through. And for writing the application, I would commit a solid 1 man-month of time. And the SBIR has very fixed submission schedule of January 5, April 5, and September 5 every year. For the NIH SBIR, you have to register with HHS. You need to obtain an IRS employee identification number. You must register with the Dun & Bradstreets for your DUNS number. Register in the System of Award Management, SAM. You need to register with grants.gov. Register with the Electronic Research Administration, ERA Commons. And register with the SBA Company Registry at sbir.gov. It's really important to stay in the loop. NIH SBIR STTR has a listserv. You should sign up for timely email notices on the programs. You'll receive solicitation announcements, notices of changes, closing dates, and notices of webinars and tutorials from the agencies. Each federal agency has a unique grant process. Please read the requests and the proposals and the instructions very carefully. Each agency has different instructions and different criteria for awards. Consider each of them to be unique customers with different needs that must be met. NIH SBIR core review criteria include 5 elements. First is the significance. Is the problem you're addressing important? Next is innovation. Will the product make a difference? Investigators. Are you well qualified? The approach. Are the studies well designed? And the environment. The resources available for success. Make sure when you write your SBIR application that it addresses all of these review criteria. In addition, Phase 2 SBIR adds the high commercial potential of your product to the first 5 elements. The title is 2 parts. Part A should be what is the product or innovation, and Part B should be what is the public health problem or significance. Here are 4 examples of titles. Some are good and some are not so good. Take a little time here and think about how you would make these titles more attractive to hook a reviewer's attention and his or her imagination. After a great title, the abstract is the most important part of your proposal. Within the abstract, you should outline your research approach, summarize and quantify the results you anticipate, assuming success. And what does this set you up for, or how does it move you along the commercialization path? Make sure the abstract is understandable to a layperson or your grandma. In the abstract, make sure that you have absolutely no confidential information because this will be publicized. The specific aims. For the specific aims, I recommend that you select 2 or 3 deliverables. For each of these, make a quantitative goal so that you have a go, no-go decision point. Do not overcommit in the Phase 1 SBIR. Again, make sure everything that you propose is achievable. Have a plan B for each specific aim in the event something goes wrong, and discuss your highest risks and your mitigation approach for each of these risks. I'd like to point out that the program directors at the NIH are your friends. They're highly accessible and very willing to help you out. So contact your program director at least 4 weeks prior to the deadline to discuss your proposal and receive feedback from them. To enable this discussion, please provide your specific aims to them, and this is a very concise 1-page document. Here's a short list of some of the NIH program directors for the SBIR program. All of these people are highly accessible and completely willing to talk to you, so please pick up the phone or email them directly. They will have your back. SBIR commercialization plan sections include the value of the SBIR project, the company overview, the market, customer, and competition, IP protection, finance plan, production and marketing plan, and the revenue stream. The commercialization plan should offer a clear and concise description of the commercial product or the service enabled by your innovation, as well as the market need you are addressing. The commercialization plan maps out a strategy to move the product candidate forward, describes the current and anticipated competitive landscape, identifies the resources required to get to market, and discusses the strategy that your organization will use to generate revenue. It's critical that you create a compelling story. Identify a real problem or an unmet medical need. Hook your readers straight away. Make them care as much as you do about the project. You need to have a solution with a technological innovation. Make sure your story is credible and lucid. You really have to gain the full attention and buy-in of your reviewer up front. All the rest of your application is truly supportive detail, and no one will be willing to read it if you don't hook them by the end of the abstract. For your product, you need to describe the core technology or the platform. Clearly articulate the market need for your product, and be sure that you focus on a single individual product. You need to define your product. Choose an indication. A single narrow disease is best, because you'll be assigned to a knowledgeable reviewer who really cares about that particular disease. And then think about your value proposition. You need to define the customer, who will use it, and why. And then what value do you bring to that customer? You should think a little bit about your product naming. A lot of folks in their SBIR grant will describe their innovation. So, McDonald's has innovated a unique sandwich, which is a hamburger composed of 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun. The sauce is proprietary and will be held as a trade secret. Every time you talk about your invention, you don't want to have a 1-paragraph description. Instead, you're going to say, MCD 101 is our lead candidate. And then eventually you're going to have a trademark name, and you'll call it the Big Mac, and you'll use TM on that. And then after it's received registration, you'll move to the R with a circle. And then finally, any drug name must go to the regulatory proprietary name review of the FDA, can be approved prior to first sale. So for the purposes of the SBIR, choose a simple non-proprietary indicator name like the MCD 101. In your company overview, please discuss the relevant commercialization capabilities of your team. Talk about the present size of the company in terms of employees and the products and services that you offer. Also include the history of previous federal and non-federal funding. Committed collaborators are great. Be sure to say what each PI/PD collaborator and consultant will contribute to the project. A CV of accomplishments does not tell the reviewer what the collaborator is pledging to do for the project, so make sure to outline what they're bringing to the table to help your particular project. A collaborator can bring expertise, equipment, facilities, connections, their own publication record, and it also demonstrates a third-party support for the project. So for the SBIR Phase 2, it's great to have supporters, and those letters of support can go into the appendix. Start early collecting letters of support. So the bigger the company that you're getting a letter of support from, the longer it will take to get that letter approved through their legal department and signed by their CEO. I suggest that you draft the content of this letter and have the company modify the body and then put the language onto their own letterhead. You'll need to discuss your business model, which is essentially how you're going to make money. Is it going to be a service that you're providing, or are you going to license to a partner, or are you going to have direct sales? ID the verticals that you're going to be addressing. It could be healthcare, it could be veterinary medicine, for example. Identify your best path to market, which is typically the fastest path to market. And lastly, discuss distribution channels to reach your customer. Again, whether you'll have a sales force or perhaps license to someone else for distribution. Market, customer, and competition. We're going to spend some time on this section as SBIR calls it out as very important. And there are quite a lot of really good resources out there for you to access. For the due diligence and discovery process, it's really important to understand the competitive landscape. And one of the best ways to go about this is to look at previously funded SBIR projects. For this, you can look at the NIH Reporter. It's an amazing online resource to you. The Reporter offers a repository of past NIH-funded research projects, and it will allow you to link up to publications and patents that resulted from that funding. In the Reporter, you can run a keyword search, and you can discover where past projects were funded, what review section looked at them, the name of the company that received the award, the PI, the abstract, and more. The Federal Reporter funding information covers funded projects from the DoD, the EPA, the NIH, NASA, NSF, USDA, VA. Here I'm showing you a screenshot from the NIH Reporter homepage. As you can see, it is very flexible regarding the search options available to you. In this example, I've typed in the keywords BET inhibitor, and I'm looking for SBIR funding mechanism. After the results are retrieved, I can click on the Data Analyze tab and then choose circles and get a visualization like this one that I've shown here. At this point, I can click on any segment of this circle of interest, and these are the types of results that will be pulled out. They show specific titles of funded projects, and then you can click on any of these projects and get the grant details, including the abstract and the PI and other information. Slide 38. The Freedom of Information Act. This is a double-edged sword for you. You can get great insights into the words of your competitors, but if funded, your own application will be made public. So the Freedom of Information Act creates public disclosures upon indexing. However, you can mark up your application as confidential. If you do this, then you must indicate on the cover page of your application that it contains confidential information. If an applicant fails to identify proprietary information at the time of submission, then it will require a substantive justification in order to withhold information in the future should anyone request it under the Freedom of Information Act. And as we pointed out earlier, absolutely never put any proprietary information in your abstract. The state of Maryland has some awesome resources for market research. The state provides access to medical e-track and pharma e-track and Frost & Sullivan. The Maryland Market Search Resource Centers are accessible by appointment only, and this slide tells you where they're located at TEDCO, fast forward east at Johns Hopkins, and the Germantown Innovation Center. Again, make sure that you call and make an appointment to access the terminals. You can also discover competitive information by looking at current clinical trials. Clinicaltrials.gov is, of course, the go-to place, and you can search by clinical phase, the sponsor collaborator, and the funder type. And you'll likely come up with pharmaceutical companies that are actively running clinical trials in your space. Think carefully about the epidemiology of your disease of interest and consider whether the prevalence or the incidence helps create the best market story. You can find information on prevalence and incidence at the National Cancer Institute SEER reports, or the World Cancer Report. The annual publications by WHO have wonderful information on epidemiology. And for non-cancer indications, you can look at the disease foundations, patient advocacy groups, and of course, PubMed. In the commercialization plan, you'll need to discuss your regulatory path. You'll likely want to say that you've retained a consultant or an advisor. You'll want to understand the division for review and discuss whether or not you're going to pursue orphan status and if any expedited pathways will be available to you. And finally, it might be helpful to look up meeting notes of any of your competitors that have products that provide a precedent for your own. And you can find these on the FDA website. It's very helpful to your SBIR reviewer if you include a competition comparison chart. This chart reduces all your text down to an easy-to-digest table, comparing the key attributes of your product to that of the competitors. It will show that you've carefully thought about what your competitive advantages are and should clearly show how you will gain market share over your competitors.